and creating where you have the media different than what the people are, I think we're starting to see a big difference in definition of what media is, especially now, moving forward. So do you see a problem with that? I mean, especially, I'm reading the definitions here of media. We're seeing a lot more podcasts, not national, just different aspects of that. Um, I just wanted to see if you have an answer to that question.
Senator Kim.
Yeah, we actually had a lot of conversation about this to make sure that we are defining what are considered to be legitimate news media. And so there were several definitions in statute, and we had folks go through and pick the one that we thought would make sure that we were giving access to people who are legitimate members of the media and not just somebody who's got a blog somewhere. So that was our intent. And the reason that we are carving out the news media is that we do believe, since they are doing reporting for other people and to get the word out more publicly, and that their requests also tend to be more targeted, honestly, that it was a fair thing to carve them out and give them more, retain those deadlines for the news media.
Senator B. Pelton, good. Okay, members, other questions? Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Kipp. I just want to acknowledge I got an email, an inquiry about this bill from apparently one of your constituents that I think that you and I have talked and are familiar with, but maybe you could just kind of flush out some of the concerns about parents and school boards and maybe teacher interactions that are happening. And again, it really sounded like a lot of the concern was that maybe not only open records, but open meetings. They weren't able to find out when these meetings were going on for them to get to have these conversations. And it sounded like then they were kind of, defaulted back to an open records kind of request because they couldn't find out when the meetings were to have their questions answered. If you could maybe flush some of that out for us, I'd appreciate it.
Senator Kipp.
Okay, yes, thank you. In terms of that particular complaint there, yeah, so my understanding is that sort of a subcommittee meeting of the Board of Education in Poudre School District. They have their regular Board of Education meetings, which are publicly noticed and posted. I don't know what they do for their legislative meetings. I'm assuming they have to follow meeting law. I used to be on that school board. When I was like chair of the legislative meeting, yes, we did have to publicly notice those meetings, and I don't know why they wouldn't be, and they should be following the law. I can't speak for the school district since I haven't been on that board in like 7+ years now, but I would hope that they are following the law. But there is nothing in this bill that says they can't get that information. I know there are a group of individuals in my school district who've also had some their children have had some really bad personal experiences, and there is no excuse for those personal experiences. But I know that there is a belief that I am bringing this bill to prevent their families from being able to get information about the incidents that happened with their children. I want to let you know that is not the case. That is absolutely 100% not the case. And you can always get information about your children in the schools, right? I mean, here we're saying you can't give out like contact information for students, but that's for the public. You always can get information about your own child and your own child's school records through the school district. There are some other accusations here, which I'm happy to address. I know, like they say in last year's legislative session, the bill was financially supported by the school district. I wouldn't say that. The school district took a neutral position on the bill, and they did have a lobbyist. So if you want to call that support, I guess, but they monitored the bill. There are also concerns, and this is one that I think is fair to bring up. that we have in the bill that if the subject of a records request is not scheduled to work. So in the case of like somebody being on maternity leave or taking a sabbatical, whatever the case may be, that the custodian must still hand over all of the records in their custody in the required time frame and all other records that they are able to obtain. But we very well know that some records might be on somebody's cell phone. So what we're saying there is that as soon as that person, they need to hand over that in the required time frame, and then when that person is scheduled to return to work, they need to let the requesting party know so that they can go and retrieve additional records if there are any, right? We're trying, and I don't know how that is happening differently now, because if you can't get in touch with somebody when they're on leave, it's kind of beyond your control, but we're just trying to make sure that there is a path forward to get those records. Does that make sense? Okay.
Good for now, Mr. Vice Chair. Okay, Senator Ball.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Totally different topic. I had a question about one specific provision in the bill. This is on page 9, line 14. I believe it's subsection F2. So this is the portion of the bill that states that a requester that makes a request that has been determined by a custodian to be for the direct solicitation of business for pecuniary gain. Actually, I think this is the appeal of that determination. But in any event, this is speaking to a determination that a custodian might make that someone is making core requests to do business solicitations, and then there's sort of different recourse for that. I'm just curious about the implementation of this. I know we've had conversations, you've described some of the behavior that we're seeing with core requests that are really sort of aimed at future business. But if you could just say a little bit more about what this is sort of targeted towards, and then how a custodian would be able to determine that someone is making a core request for pecuniary gain.
Senator Kipp.
Yes, thank you for that question. That's a really good question. And again, we've had a lot of conversations on this. Really, what this is targeted towards is we know that our counties are, and many of our other entities, I think some of our water districts are receiving a large number of, give us everybody who's done X in the last 5 years and their names and addresses so that we can go market to them, right? So we put in here that there is an option that they could have an affidavit that somebody signs. It's kind of what happens in the criminal law, is my understanding. So we're sort of borrowing from that, because in criminal law, they're always saying, well, there's a similar provision. So that's kind of where we've taken some of that language from. But we really think that, as we're not denying information, but we think that if people are using government to fulfill their business requests, that the government should not be subsidizing the businesses, because there is an amount in statute that is required, that is the maximum cap that can be charged to fulfill a core request. That amount does not generally cover the cost of making a core request for the person who is requesting those records. So what we are just saying is, you can have 30 days because, your marketing is not our problem. We will give you the information, but we want some extra time to do so. And we want to be able to cover the full cost of getting that information. And I think this bill is, again, extremely fair, because we're really trying to just say, yeah, you can have the information, but you're doing this for your business for monetary gain, and you should cover the cost of that.
Senator Ball, good?
Thank you.
Okay. And Senator Kipp, I'll note, the apply to the district court language was sounding a little bit familiar. We do have formulations in Cora where somebody can go to district court in, I would almost call it an interlocutory way. So I don't know how often that happens, but at least the Denver District Court is probably familiar. Maybe there are witnesses that could speak to that. I did have 2 questions of my own. The first was page 10. And I don't know if this is just drafting convention or what, but we're in that same sub 3F. Does not apply to a contract or other information delivered using computer data extraction methods that require minimal human intervention for retrieval. the language sounds dated almost to an extent that I wasn't totally clear what you're getting at, but you have.
Let me try and explain. It would be good to have this on the record too. So what that means is that if there is information that people are basically able to go online and download, that doesn't become subject to this. So there is information online that people use for their business purposes, but they're just going online and downloading it. It doesn't cost the governmental entity any additional work for that to be there. So we're saying you don't get a charge for that because you're already doing it. Does that make sense? And if we need to, refine that language, this is the language that we came up last year in working with some of our stakeholders who were very concerned that this could lead to them getting charged for downloading information.
Okay, let me offer an example that I'm personally familiar with, and maybe it helps. So the judicial branch is ultimately the custodian of all of the data about cases, civil and criminal and whatnot, and they work with a vendor, I think LexisNexis, to make that available. And if you have a subscription, you can go and just get a lot of stuff. And there's a contract, I guess, between the judicial branch and Lexis. And then on the other hand, I, as the user, have to make a contract with judicial. And now I can get stuff in a method that does not require or requires minimal human intervention for retrieval. So is that a fair example of what you're getting at, or do I misunderstand you?
No, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I think that's more of a subscription service, isn't it? Because you're paying for that?
In that example, yes, I, as the user of data made available or even vended by the judicial branch, I'm paying judicial something.
Well, let me give you an example that might help. So in my county, I can go onto the county assessor's website and I can look up property records, right? And I don't need to go and request them because they're all publicly available and online. And so I know that some of that information is available in a larger format where you could probably download lots of records at once. And that is, I think, the kind of thing we're contemplating. I don't know that a subscription service necessarily falls in there.
That's helpful, actually. Maybe that's a better example. I'm certainly familiar with browsing assessor websites in multiple counties. Okay, next question, and we did talk about this a little bit, but sorry, it was page 8, and the idea of direct solicitation for a business for pecuniary gain, what that is and isn't. Let me give you 2 examples. So an easy one, okay, so DORA maintains a database of regulated professionals. Suppose I'm in the business of trying to sell, I don't know, pharmaceuticals or DME to doctors. I want to get the list of all the DORA licensed doctors in the state and send them a postcard or something. That strikes me as a pretty clear example of direct solicitation of business for pecuniary gain. Is that fair?
I would agree.
Very good. Next one, and I've seen this happen around this place too. Sometimes there is litigation and somebody who's got a client on one side or the issue of another, one side of an issue or the other, is looking for information to represent their client. I'm trying to think of.
Are you talking about the recent discovery decision?
I'm actually not necessarily, although I'll invite you to speak to that in just a moment. I mean, okay, I'm just trying to think of a good example. Let's say there's some sort of, maybe like a wage dispute or an employment non-discrimination dispute. And somebody has an aggrieved individual as a client and the other side is, the respondent is maybe a business or something. Somebody wants to seek information, say from CDLE, to see if there's any information that is maybe probative of something in the case, that they could then get in under the rules of evidence. Now, at the end of the day, there might be a monetary judgment if plaintiff is successful, and an attorney might get compensated according to the contract with plaintiff. But that's not really, at least I don't think of that as business for pecuniary gain. That's helping somebody vindicate their rights and doing your job as an attorney. So in my mind, I distinguish that example from the first one, but I'd like to hear you say what you intend.
Yes, and I agree with you. I don't think that's direct solicitation of business for pecuniary gain. have a client and you're acting on behalf of that client. That I think is clear. I will touch upon the whole discovery decision, and I don't remember the name of the case. Somebody who's a great legal mind might have that here. But there was a recent case that was in court, and I think everybody agrees that it came to the right decision, but for different reasons. And the issue behind it is, and okay, disclaimer, I am not an attorney, but as it was described to me, if somebody is in the middle of litigation and they use Cora to go and get the records that they need instead of using a Cora request, there was a dispute about like if that's kosher or not, right? And so because the idea in a lawsuit, and again, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, is that the judge needs to play the balancer, right? If this person's getting this information, this person's need to get this information. And we actually had a lot of discussions we actually had subgroups in my stakeholding where we were talking about this particular issue. And we were not able to come to any agreement because in the end, the requesters on the other side of the issue said, no, we just want to make it clear that open records requests are open records requests, and that whether they're being used for litigation or not is not part of the problem. But so in my last bone that I throw out to everybody in an attempt to find a solution was this: well, why don't you just, if you get a Cora request that's part of litigation, you can just report that to the judge, and so the judge is aware of that as they approach litigation in that case, right? So that they know that people got this information, so that in the end, the judge becomes, again, that person who does the balancing. And they were like, well, you can already do that, and so we really just don't want to put that in there. So nothing is in the bill about that, but just to let people know, they can let the judge know if the other party got something through open records if they feel like that litigation needs to be balanced in some way.
Thank you. Senator Paul, I wonder, as the other attorney member here, are you familiar with the case? It sounds like we're mixing up Rule 26 discovery and Cora a little bit.
I am not familiar with the case, Mr. Chair.
Possibly some witnesses will be.
I can look it up and let you know what it is after I have it on my computer somewhere.
Okay, I'll let that be for now. Members, other questions of our sponsors? All right. Some of us were in judiciary until 9 o'clock last night. I feel like we've just brought a bit of the ghost of that committee in here. Thank you for indulging. All right, more seriously, sponsors, we have witnesses signed up against, amend, and for. How would you like the committee to proceed?
Any way you like, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I think we have two panels of against. I'll just try to alternate a little bit. Sponsors, should we hear from against, amend? You can say who should go first.
I don't care. Why don't we let the people who are opposed go first so that the people who are in favor of the bill can respond to those issues?
Sure, very good. Okay, tell you what, Mr. Barker, looks like most of the opposed witnesses are remote, so I think we'll just try to do some combined panels for efficiency. Signed up against in the room, Missy Espinoza. Okay, and then Mr. Barker, looks like you've got a lot of it, but signed up against online were Natalie Menton, Corey Gaines, Jessica Fensky, Jessica Capsel, C-A-P-S-E-L, and Jody Nickerson. And then was there anybody else physically present who wanted to testify against? Okay, tell you what, Mr. Roberts, why don't you join us since you're here? And then Mr. Barker, I know I'm tossing a lot of names at you. If we could also connect to the Zoom or elevate on the Zoom, Linda Hutchinson. Okay. You know what, Mr. Roberts, while we're getting people sorted on Zoom, why don't you start?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jeff Roberts. I'm Executive Director of the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, a nonpartisan group that promotes government transparency and helps journalists and the public understand and use Colorado's open government laws. The views of our legislative committee may not represent the views of all of our member organizations. CFOIC is taking an amend position on Senate Bill 77 because we appreciate Senator Kipp's extensive stakeholding and her willingness to include some provisions that could be helpful to requesters if the bill passes. But as with last year's bill, CFOIC is concerned about the extended response times in Senate Bill 77 because it will create more obstacles to obtaining public records. In my job, I hear every day from journalists and members of the public who encounter delays, incorrectly applied exemptions, and exorbitant fees. The maximum research and retrieval fee rate in Cora jumped 23% last July 1st to $41.37 an hour. And we've counted nearly 1,500 cities, towns, counties, state agencies, special districts, school districts, and public universities that have raised their rates since then. As a guest columnist wrote in Colorado Politics last month, the price of obtaining public records in our state can be as much as a mortgage payment or even more. That's a significant barrier all by itself, which is why governments don't need a reason to take longer to process Cora requests. Earlier this week, I spoke with someone who's been waiting since October for a response from a public university in Colorado. People have little or no power when their request for records is delayed. They don't file lawsuits over delayed responses because of the time it takes to resolve a lawsuit. And in January, the Court of Appeals decided that requesters cannot sue over delayed responses if they eventually get the records, even if it took months. The ruling applies to the judicial branch's records rules, not Cora, but the Court of Appeals would likely look at a similar Cora lawsuit the same way. The language in Pair 2 about the right to sue over a denial of records is identical to the language in Cora. Coloradans need access to public records, not more obstacles. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you. And if you'll hold, we'll go to our online witnesses, then we'll open up for questions. Okay, I'm going to call on the folks whose cameras are on first, and let's see. Apologize, I'm having some trouble. Whoop, now we just lost the screen. All right, there you go. Ms. Capsule, I think you're ready. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of this committee. My name is Jessica Capsule. I am here representing myself today. I speak today as a citizen from a school district where the core process is our only means of obtaining information and holding our school board and administration accountable. With that in mind, I strongly oppose SB 077 as it imposes unnecessary restrictions on the core process and places an undue burden on citizens while granting more power to government entities. The bill's extension in response time, when the records custodian is not scheduled to work during the response period, seems fair at first, but there is a glaring concern. What prevents a custodian from claiming that they are out of the office for an extended period of time, potentially months, to delay providing records? As with so much of the existing Cora law, there is no clear accountability measure here to ensure that such claims are legitimate and won't be used as a loophole to avoid transparency. Also, the bill's provision that allows records custodians to treat multiple requests within 14 days for, quote, facially similar content as a singular request seems problematic. The term facially similar content is vague and open to interpretation. Who defines what constitutes this content? A records custodian could potentially deem unrelated requests from the same individual as facially similar to target a requester. This could open the door to abuse, allowing records custodians to weaponize the Cora process against citizens trying to access their public records. I do appreciate the provision requiring public entities to post rules and policies related to Cora. This promotes transparency, which is a positive step forward. I wish instead of creating more Cora laws aimed at reducing citizens' access to information, the legislature would focus on laws that make information more accessible, so the Cora process isn't necessary at all. While this bill may be well-intentioned, it introduces more barriers to accessing public records and undermines transparency. I urge the committee to vote on this bill and to work toward a solution that supports the rights of citizens to access their information in a timely and accountable manner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just note for all of our online witnesses, when you've had your turn, please do stay on the Zoom, and once everyone's spoken, we'll open up for questions from the committee. With that, I'm going to try to go around the screen. Ms. Hutchinson, please go ahead.
Mr. Chairperson and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Linda Hutchinson and I represent the League of Women Voters of Colorado. As you know, the League has been nonpartisan for all of our 105 years. The League of Women Voters is offering an amendment to Senate Bill 2577. The League has a long history of supporting transparent government. Transparency is key to a healthy democracy because it allows voters to play their designated role as informed participants in their government. The League acknowledges that the core request process can be burdensome for both records custodians and records requesters. We appreciate the changes in this bill that will make Cora more user-friendly. Those user-friendly features should make the core request process less burdensome for records custodians as well. However, filing a core request today is expensive, with the first hour of record search time being free, but additional hours costing $41.37 per hour. And this bill would deny a citizen or advocacy group one of their free hours if they file 2 requests on the same topic within the same 14-day period. This legislation asks citizens to accept longer response times in order to alleviate the burden on records custodians, and yet does nothing to compensate individuals whose requests are delayed, still at the charge of $41.37 per hour of record search time beyond the first hour. Therefore, the League respectfully asks that you consider an amendment stating that a requester will receive 1 hour search time free of charge per day when a custodian fails to meet the deadlines established in these guidelines for delivery within a reasonable time, notification of an extension to the delivery time, or delivery within extension as stated in the notification of an extension to the delivery time. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Ms. Minton, please go ahead.
My name is Natalie Benton, and I am representing myself. There are 2 main features I oppose within this bill as written, and that is the longer time to get records for citizens and combining the request within the 2-week period. This bill aims to provide government agencies with that additional time to fulfill records requests, but it fails to acknowledge the significant financial barriers that are already faced by individuals attempting to obtain such information. As a community advocate, I have frequently relied on Cora through different various governments to access documents pertinent to governance at the local and state level. However, the cost associated with retrieving these records has often been prohibitively high. Agencies charge $30 up to over $40 per hour for research, retrieval, and redacting information. While the median hourly wage in Colorado is approximately $25, that means the expense of accessing public records can surpass the average worker's earnings, creating a substantial financial burden for those seeking transparency. A recent long-term investigation that I've been involved in over a length of time to uncover a local government exploiting a loophole in the law to use over $300,000 in public money to hire a political operative. Then the government engaged in deceptive practices during the ballot issue and through the presentation to the public. As a result of that, and trying to get the emails from the contractor, the political operative, and my local government, I was quoted $2,500 to get these records. A good portion of that will be in seeking out what needs to be redacted. Why should the information even be redacted? Why should I be paying for that? It's worth noting government agencies employ public information officers and communications staff whose roles are specifically designed to manage information dissemination. The assertion that additional time is necessary to fulfill these records requests overlooks the existing infrastructure intended to facilitate transparency. Transparency is the cornerstone of healthy civic engagement. It is our collective responsibility. And when regular citizens are discriminated within Senate Bill 77, that is where I must stand in opposition. Again, there are some parts of this bill that are good, but citizens should not be discriminated against. And the 2-week combination, I mean, I have a government that operates 4 days a week. They are not even open Fridays. So that even adds more to the extent of the time to get records. Citizens should not be discriminated against. We serve a valuable role in the community. Thank you for your time. Please strike the portions that are against transparency. They don't belong in this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And again, please hold for a few more witnesses, then we'll go to questions. Ms. Fenske, please go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Jessica Fenske. I'm from Jefferson County and I'm representing myself. I wish to express my deep concern and opposition to Senate Bill 25077, a piece of legislation that threatens to undermine transparency and accountability. This bill proposes to extend the response time for public requests from 3 to 5 working days for the general public while maintaining the current time frame for recognized media outlets. This preferential treatment creates a two-tiered system and marginalizes citizen journalists and concerned residents who play an important role in shedding light on issues that often escape mainstream media coverage. It simply isn't in their bandwidth. And this has happened a lot this last year where citizens have brought up information that the mainstream media has completely skipped on purpose, maybe, I don't know. Citizen journalists are the eyes and ears of our neighborhoods. We dive into our local government proceedings, and there are so many proceedings and committee hearings and stuff that is not, it doesn't get recorded and projected out later. So we have to do the court request. By imposing extended delays on our access to public records, SB 25077 hampers our ability to report timely and relevant information and effectively silencing the voices of advocates for grassroots change. Moreover, the bill's provision allowing custodians to treat multiple requests for the same individual within 14-day period as a single request further restricts our capacity. I ran into this with Jefferson County this year. This is largely due to the cost implications stemming from follow-up information. All the governments that I engage with have public information employees and communication staff, so they're already getting paid. Why are we double paying them? Transparency should not be a privilege reserved for the established media entities alone. Where's the equity? In an era where newsrooms are shrinking and coverage is becoming increasingly centralized, citizens journalists fill the void by reporting on issues that matter most to the local communities where we are. We should strive to empower all individuals committed to upholding transparency, regardless of their affiliation. Please ensure we continue to have equal access, fairness, and vote no, at least on those measures with the media carve out and the 14-day period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nickerson. That brings us to you. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We're hearing you fine. Please continue.
Thank you kindly. Thank you, Chair and the committee members for giving me this opportunity to speak on this bill. My name is Jody Nickerson. I'm in Jefferson County. I represent myself. This bill states has no merit, and I feel there are some good parts, but it really has no merit, and I would ask for a no vote on this. It states to extend response time on request. Why is this? Is because they can't meet the guidelines at present. In my experience, as I had asked for core requests, the custodian comes up with overwhelming excuses to suppress my request. I am aware of date parameters and costs involved, but when responding to the custodian's response to me, I am unable to break the date parameters and make a separate request, which the custodian denies. Their decision is based on wanting to charge me and saying that I'm separating a one subject request. Now, I have not ever had a 7-day response, and I did not complain, whether it be a 3 or 5 day. I've had not even a response in 7 days. But then I'm confused on this 7 days, and then in paragraph 2, and then you have, which was a 5, day parameter, but then you go into paragraph 5, unless it applies to a specific business entity in comparison to a public requester. To me, this is kind of a discrimination, which may facilitate core requests against the people that are doing a personal request in reference to a business request, because they discriminate from somebody that may be a repeat core requester. Anyways, I guess when it all comes down to this bill, I don't see any merit in giving such loopholes or changing such loopholes unless the custodian is having difficulty in their productivity, which seems to be an internal problem that needs to be addressed. Or is this just another attempt to the failed bill of SB 24-1296? Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Now we'll go to questions. Members, Senator B. Belton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is for Mr. Roberts. I know we've had debate after debate on what is media and that sort of thing. My issue is that I feel like that this is the people's records and that media should not have a special carve out in this bill. And I don't think there's any difference between Kyle Clark or Corey Gaines, who writes a blog and some things that he does his own research on. He's a citizen journalist. I don't feel like that there should be any difference between those two. I would just like to get your perspective.
Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. I spent most of my career as a journalist, so for daily newspapers. So I definitely understand the reason for having a carve out. Professional news organizations inform everyone. However, our organization represents everyone. They represent the people, not just journalists. And so we're very sympathetic, and I run a hotline, a Freedom of Information hotline, which is open not just to journalists, but the public. And I hear about these issues all day, every day. And that's why I made the argument that I tried to make about more delays and the fee issue that I brought up. They don't just affect journalists, they affect the public. And there are a lot of people out there just trying to get information about government.
Senator, good for now? Okay, members, any other questions for any of our witnesses? Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I mean, just bringing that up, Mr. Roberts there. Do you believe anybody who has a phone and a pen is a journalist?
Mr. Roberts.
No, I do not believe that.
Thank you.
All right, members, other questions for any of our witnesses? We are seeing none. All right, Mr. Roberts, thank you. To everyone online, thanks for testifying with us today. Final call, Mr. Barker, anyone on the Zoom? Okay, let's promote Mr. Gaines. All right, final call for anybody in the room. All right, Mr. Gaines, if you can hear us, please go ahead with your comments.
I'm going to try this. Hello, can you hear me?
More or less, please go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm on a very dumb, non-smart flip phone. My name is Corey Gaines, and I'm calling in opposition to this bill, at least as it is in its present form. My concerns are probably things you've heard from other people. My concerns relate to the fact that there are different rules for different people, and that it puts one group ahead of another, which is not how we ought to be. We should all be treated equally. I don't care if everybody has if the rules are harder or easier, but the rules ought to be the same for everybody. The government shouldn't be in the business of making a protected class, which it treats with preferential treatment. The second thing I would like to mention is I'm a little concerned about the lumping of multiple requests in 14 days' time into a single request. I have had more than one case where I've messed up. I've screwed up a date. I've done something wrong. I found out something after I'd sent in a request and have to amend it or change it. These are not things where I'm trying to hector somebody or get away with something. It's just the way the world works. And my concern is that this would put a roadblock in front of people such as myself who don't do core requests for a living, but have to do them around their living. We need to be careful about allowing records custodians more discretion and more opportunity to put up roadblocks than they currently have. I have good relationships with a lot of the custodians that I've spoken with, but there have been times where, they've done some stuff that's right on the boundary of being illegal. And without a media apparatus behind me and a legal apparatus to defend and go back against these records custodians, I'm again put at a disadvantage. This bill has some good things in it. There are ideas in here which I support, and I would be behind it were it not for the fact that it differentiates between people and what they're requesting, and that it allows custodians too much discretion in what they do, and it doesn't allow for honest mistakes. Without those, I would support it. But as it's written now, I do not. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gaines. Members, questions? Seeing none. All right, sir, thanks for being with us. All right, do we have a Meredith Henry? Okay, please come up. And at this point, I believe we're switching to witnesses signed up in support. Matt Cook. Yeah, sorry, the microphone in the middle is not working. You can use either side. So I understand that you were in an amend. Okay, I may start mixing up positions just for the sake of efficiency here. Do we have Kimberly Sorrells? Do we have Dr. Jubal Yenny? And then Mr. Barker, signed up online are Alyssa Alpe, A-L-P-E. Do we have Dr. Ann Keke, K-E-K-E, and Ian Kalmanowicz? Great, all right, we'll start in the room, and we'll start with you on the end. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Kim Sorrells. I am the county attorney for Jefferson County, and I'm here to speak in favor of this bill. I brought with me today some real-life examples and some data as to why these changes are necessary for our government. In 2019, we received 217 core requests. In 2020, that number jumped to 253. In 2021, it jumped to 383. In 2022, it jumped to 487. In 2023, it was 471. In 2024, it was 650 core requests. From January to February in 2025, we've already received and responded to 78 core requests. So that was a 38% jump from 23 to 24 and 199% jump from 2019 to 2024. Our residents are really active, and that's great. They want to be involved in government, and they're entitled to these documents. We don't deny that. I just want to share with you some impact that it has on our county operations when we have to respond to this number of core requests. And I want to let you know that the core response team moved to my office last year, and I asked the commissioners for additional staffing. So I have one full-time paralegal who's a core administrator, and then I have another paralegal who splits his time between zoning enforcement and responding to CORA. And when we get requests that we have multiple requests at the same time that we have to respond to within these short time periods, and we have significant requests that take hours and hours and days to respond to, what ends up happening is the lawyers who have to review these production before it goes out the door, and the paralegals who are doing the initial reviews of these documents, they're pulled away from other tasks. Like, for example, the gentleman who does half core and half zoning, when we get some of the core requests that I'll describe for you in a minute that take 60 hours of time to do, then he's not able to do zoning enforcement. The attorneys who are on the transactional team who review these documents to make sure that we're not releasing confidential information out the door that we're not allowed legally to do, those attorneys can't work on the contracts for road and bridge. Those attorneys can't work on the contracts for public health. So there are other core responsibilities that we have as a county that we're unable to complete when we have to turn to these tight timelines. And so for that reason, we support the additional time under CORA to allow us to balance the needs of responding to CORA with doing our jobs. I'm going to give you an example. Request number 239120 asks for documents about how many acres would be cleared in Elk Meadows Park and 2 other open space parks. The result of that search was 1,153 emails and 340 documents. We gave an estimate that that review would take 9 hours. The actual review was 36.25 hours. We had another request, 234866. It was a request about Terumo and communications with CDPHE, the EPA, all sorts of documents they were requesting. That search revealed 4,085 emails and 1,828 documents. We estimated that would take 66 hours to review, and they paid for that. But it took 144 hours to review. So those are just some examples, and they're not isolated. In December, we received 38 core requests, including this last one that took 144 hours. It was physically impossible for our team, even if everyone who was not on vacation at that time dropped everything they're doing to respond within that time frame. It just wasn't possible.
Ms. Earls, thank you. And we'll see, we may get more into things with questions. I'll just go down the line, then I'll go on the Zoom. Ms. Henry, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Meredith Henry. I'm the Senior Policy and Advocacy Associate for the ARC of Colorado. For those who may not be familiar, the ARC of Colorado is one of 15 chapters statewide. We promote and protect the rights of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and support their full inclusion in the community. I would like to thank Senators Kipp and Rich for their work on Senate Bill 77. We appreciate Senator Kipp's collaboration with our valuable disability partners on this important bill. CORA is a vital tool for disability rights advocates in enabling transparency, accountability, and policy change. It helps ensure compliance with laws like the ADA and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Access to CORA enables advocates to identify systemic issues and potential violation of rights, which is essential for improving the systems and supports for people with IDD. I am testifying in an amend position today on Senate Bill 77 because we believe some aspects of the bill need greater clarity, particularly regarding the breakdown of costs for CORA requests. We do not believe these amendments will change the bill's intent or impact. Currently, publicly posted information on fees for CORA requests varies wildly. For example, Cherry Creek School District may require a 50% deposit before processing CORA requests, while Denver Public Schools and Healthcare Policy and Financing clearly cite applicable statutes for fees. However, Adams County CORA webpage doesn't mention any fee details. None of the CORA policies we reviewed include information about fee reductions or waivers. The current CORA statute allows custodians to reduce fees or waivers when the requests serve a public purpose, and fee reductions should be applied consistently. Parents of children with IDD and local ARC chapters frequently submit CORA requests, but often face barriers due to fees. We propose an amendment to require custodians' written policies on fees to include the process and eligibility criteria for requesting a fee waiver or reduction. Specifically, we recommend that fees be waived if it would cause financial hardship for the requester or when the request is in the interest of the public. CORA is an invaluable tool that empowers the disability community. It provides advocates with critical information to make informed decisions about disability rights and resources, helping build a stronger network for collective advocacy. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Mr. or Dr. Yenny, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Weissman, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. I'm Jubal Yenny. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Association of School Boards. And CASB represents more than 1,000 elected members of local boards of education and their superintendents. Today, CASB members would like to thank Senators Kipp and Rich for bringing the bill. CASB is here in position of support on Senate Bill 77, and I'm pleased to share that the Colorado Rural Schools Alliance is joining CASB in support. The Rural Schools Alliance asked CASB to include them in their comments. CASB member boards work very hard to ensure their communities have access to school district records. However, there's a balance between the number of requests for records and the ability of the school staff to keep up. The vast majority of Colorado school districts are considered rural and/or small rural. These districts have limited staff and are often stretched in time to accommodate the mandates required by state, including their primary mission of educating students. Having a lean staff can also mean that only one member of the team may have access to particular data. The language in the bill related to specific record custodians will potentially help the public understand when a record is not immediately available and what the process is to attain that requested record. The common sense changes in Senate Bill 77 will help schools respond to core requests in a more efficient and timely manner. Again, we would like to thank the bill sponsors for their extensive stakeholding on this bill. CASB members would respectfully ask the committee members to vote yes on Senate Bill 77.
All right, thank you, Doctor. If you'll all please hold, we'll go online. We'll start with Dr. Kiki. Please go ahead.
Right. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you, Chair Weissman, Mr. Vice President, and members of the Senate Veteran and Military Affairs Committee. I am Dr. Ann Kiki, the current president of Aurora Public Schools Board of Education. Additionally, I am a member of the Colorado Association of School Boards Board of Directors. I'd like to thank Senator Kipp and Rich for bringing the bill. CASB is here again, as our executive director said, in a position of support on the bill, Senate Bill 2577. Both bill sponsors have pushed extremely hard to ensure this bill reflects the voices of a wide range of communities. CASB members have appreciated being involved in the process of helping to craft the bill before you today. As members of the committee are well aware, governing and the important work of policy development and implementation is not easy. School board members understand how important it is for our work to be done in public and to respond to community requests for additional information. CASB members like me work tirelessly to govern in a fair and transparent manner. The bill in front of you today will enhance the process of providing local government clear rules to address Colorado Open Record Act or CORA request. Clear and concise guidelines for those making a CORA request and those who are asked to act on a request will go a long way to instill confidence in the process. I would respectfully request that members of the committee vote yes on Senate Bill 2577. And again, I am happy to attempt to address questions the committee may have along with our executive director. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and please hold for questions. Ms. Alpe, please go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of Senate Bill 25-077, modifications to Colorado Open Records Act. My name is Elisa Alpe, and I'm the Records and Administrative Services Department Manager with Northern Water. The proposed modifications to the Colorado Open Records Act address several challenges records custodians face in carrying out their regular discharge of duties and responding to open records requests. The increased flexibility in response time from 3 to 5 days and from 7 to 10 days for extenuating circumstances, the exceptions to work schedules for the absence of records custodians, as well as the ability to prioritize requests from entities harvesting data from taxpayer-funded projects for pecuniary gain while preserving the 3-day reasonable time to respond to a request by a mass medium or a news person would be welcome modifications to the CORA process. It appears to strike a balance that accommodates the interests of both the requester of public records and the records custodians responsible for responding to these records requests. Regarding the retention schedule posting requirement, we have some reservations about posting it on the public-facing website and would prefer to see the language modified from shall also post on its website to make available upon request. It is an often misunderstood document in the best of times for both internal and external users and is a product of trained records professionals. However, we also understand the modification leans towards transparency, so would accept the language as is. The support of this bill, I believe, is shared by the Special Districts Association of Colorado. On behalf of Northern Water, I thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of modifications to the Open Records Act and am available to answer questions the committee may have. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Mr. Komanowicz, please go ahead.
Thank you. Members of the committee, my name is Ian Kalmanowitz. I'm here on behalf of the Colorado Plaintiff Employment Lawyers Association, PELA. PELA is the state of Colorado's largest professional organization comprised exclusively of lawyers who represent individual employees in cases involving employment civil rights violations. It's PELA's interest in ensuring that all public employees in Colorado are provided with a workplace free from discrimination and opportunity to enforce their civil rights. I want to particularly thank Senator Kipp and all the stakeholders for all the hard work and good changes that have gone into this version of the bill from when this work started last year. We really appreciate those changes. PELA's members routinely represent public employees, and in our representative role, we often use CORA as part of our work. PELA supports this bill. Earlier in her remarks, Senator Kipp mentioned a $1 million CORA request. I had the good fortune of being the recipient of the multi-million-dollar bill for public records. Because of that experience and the experience of our members, PELA particularly appreciates the addition of language to the bill, allowing for a breakdown of costs charged to a requester. We believe that this is critical to ensuring transparency in the ability to access public records. And we also believe that it's imperative that this is included in order to prevent fees from being used as merely a tool to deny requesters access to important public records. We also appreciate that the bill does not attempt to impact the Supreme Court's recent decision in Archuleta v. Roan dealing with CORA and civil discovery. I also want to address remarks made by Senator Kipp and questions made to her by Senator Weissman, clarifying that a request for public records made by a lawyer on behalf of her client does not constitute direct solicitation of business for pecuniary gain. And I wanted to ensure that that was clear in the record today, based on Senator Kipp's comments and the questions that were asked of her, that a custodian will not make a determination that a request for records made by a lawyer on behalf of a client, for example, like what Senator Weissman gave, a request for a personnel file made by a lawyer on behalf of a client would not constitute direct solicitation of business for pecuniary gain. Thank you for your time and attention to this. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Members, questions for any of our witnesses? All right, Ms. Sorrells, I may have one for you. We had a little bit of talk about public interest waivers, and the language is not quite precisely that in the statute, but I think in 205 sub 4, CORA provides that such fee may be reduced or waived by the custodian if the electronic services and products are to be used for a public purpose, ellipsis. Fee reductions and waivers shall be uniformly applied among persons who are similarly situated. How does your office grapple with that?
So I am not personally aware of any request to Jefferson County for such waivers. One concern I would have just hearing that, I think a lot of the request could fall into a public purpose exception. For example, Ms. Minton was talking earlier about requesting documents on a contract that the use of public funds in a way that she disagreed with. And so having a citizen request such documents and bring to light issues that then they can bring to the commissioners in a public forum and have a discussion about that could be arguably a public purpose. So again, I haven't had to deal with that specifically, but I think it could have a broad reach, and then there's no compensation for the governmental entity who's having to fulfill that request. And I will say that even with the amount going up to the $40 amount, it still doesn't cover the actual cost of performing the searches, reviewing the documents, and producing them.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Members, other questions? Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Sorrells, the numbers you were giving as the increases is just mind-numbing, to be quite frank. And I don't know, can you maybe give a capsulized, do you have any idea, you guys talk about this? Are we doing something wrong? I mean, people just all of a sudden didn't start to wonder about what's going on in City Hall. I mean, that's been going on since the beginning of time, but I mean, this and, I mean, are you doing enough to get the information out there, or will you ever do enough to get it to bring these numbers back down?
Ms. Sorrells.
That's a great question. I think the ease of requesting core requests, because now we have them online on our website, you just go in and fill out a form. It's a lot easier than having to go down to a governmental entity and filling out a form and doing the request that way. I think that could be one of the reasons. As I mentioned, we brought core into my office last year, and we are looking at a number of different things to put more documents out on our website and directing people to those so that they do not even have to make a core request. Like, for example, currently our contracts are not out there, and so we're trying to understand how we can put a contract database so that if anyone wants to search for a specific contract, they can do that and they don't even have to come to us. So we are actively, at least in my county, looking to see how much more we can put out there, because we're having to continue to hire people and we don't have the money to do that just to fulfill core requests. It's become a significant problem for us.
All right, members, other questions? All right, seeing none, thanks for being with us. Dr. Kiki, Ms. Alpe, Mr. Komanowicz, thank you for being with us online today. All right, Mr. Barker, anyone else? All right, last call for anybody in the room who wanted to speak to Senate Bill 77. Come on up. Mr. Valdez, did you want to testify as well? Please join us. All right, you are Ms. Espinoza, I think. Please go ahead. The little gray button is set into the table to activate the microphone.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. It was actually very difficult to find today's meeting. My name's Missy Espinoza, and I am representing myself. I did say I will be watching you, so that's why I'm here. So let's not get it twisted. The changes that are being made are because they find us annoying. What I just heard, obviously they're overwhelmed. You wonder why people want information. That's a ridiculous statement. In 2024, 705 bills were introduced, 74% approved. We're on track for us to surpass that this year. Some of the most extreme, tyrannical, anti-civil rights legislation I've seen in my life. Some of it is just stupid, to be honest with you. Reading through the bills, I wonder where some of these people went to school, did they pay attention? I heard a senator last week couldn't even form sentences. Absolutely, we want to know what is going on behind closed doors. For example, Tom Sullivan here, $980,000 donation from Everytown to sell out our civil
Ms.
rights.
Espinoza, I will encourage you to keep your comments to
That
the
was
bill
a free
and not speak to
information. That's free
personalities.
information. I'm offering them. You guys charge for information. That's why we're here. Now, if you are having trouble, you don't have the resources to provide the public with information that is, we are entitled to. We're entitled to. You are not entitled to hide it. You are not entitled to charge us for it. We are entitled to that information. You work for us. If you don't have the resources, I might suggest shutting down useless offices like the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Stop wasting money. I'm done.
Mr. Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. My name is Michael Valdez. I am the Chief Governmental Affairs Officer for the Special District Association of Colorado. I'm coming off a supercharged 3-week bout of the Capitol crud, so I apologize in advance for my scratchy voice and the occasional cough, saying that I think I'm on the winning side of healthy right now. On behalf of our over 2,700 member districts, I am here to provide SDA's full support of SB 25077. I've also been authorized by Colorado Counties Incorporated, CCI, to add their support on the record for this bill. Let me start by thanking the sponsors for bringing this legislation forward. I'm going to talk a little bit from the old guy's perspective. I've been roaming these halls for over 30 years now. When I first started, the words stakeholder, stakeholdered, stakeholdering were not part of the vocabulary, much less the vernacular in this building. A sponsor would just drop a bill and say, if I've got the votes, I'm going to run it, I'm going to pass it. A cultural shift, in my humble opinion, a good cultural shift occurred around the turn of the century. And that is that we started doing stakeholdering, and we started talking to people and getting people's input and hearing and listening and taking into consideration their thoughts. With that as the backdrop, I want to put on the record that the stakeholder process that Senator Kipp has deployed for this legislation has been the best I've ever seen. I mean, talk about going back, what do you want, what do you need, what can we do throughout the process. In my remaining time, I want to speak to a specific provision of the bill. You've talked about it a little bit already this morning. That is starting at page 8, line 24, all the way to the top of page 10, line 3. It's the direct solicitation for pecuniary gain. This was carried over from the legislation in 2024, and it now sits in Senate Bill 77. I started at SDA about 10.5 years ago, walked in the door, and members would say it was, whether it was at training sessions in June around the state or to our conference in September, help us with the data mining. We're getting these requests from all over the country, from any person saying, give us all this data. As an example, you get a letter from a state that says, please, please provide all the invoices, and the lawyers will love this one, for all the widgets you purchased over the years. And we want to see that for 25 years going back. It's a big request. You drop everything you're doing to comply with the request. Clearly, as was described by the Senate sponsor, Senator Kipp, that was done so they can turn it around and gain access. This is not designed to stop the request. It's just to give us more time to comply. And lastly, as my time is running down, I do want to talk about the going to district court. That's not designed as a hammer. It's designed as a way of having people stop and slow down and say, is this what we want to do now? We want to go in litigation. I promise you, neither side wants to go to court. It's costly, it's time consuming, and not necessarily going to be productive for either side. I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Members, questions for our witnesses? All right, seeing none, Mr. Valdez, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the case that was referred to earlier, it was decided December 9th, Archuleta v. Rowan by the state Supreme Court.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, final call for witnesses. All right, seeing none, we'll close the witness phase, and we'll invite the sponsors back to the table. All right, sponsors, there's been some, at least some folks in the amend position. I was going to ask if you have amendments for us today.
No, sir, we have no amendments.
Very good. Members, amendments to 77, seeing none, amendment phase is closed. Wrap-up comments, Senator Kipp.
Okay, I just wanted to address a few of the things you heard in testimony. And actually, I'm just going back to amendments briefly. We have had a lot of requests for amendments to this bill. I will say particularly in the last 10 days, where, it's getting closer to being heard and people are like, well, can you change this? Can you carve this out of that? And can you not do this? And we said no, because really we feel like this bill has ended up in a very fair place for both sides. This bill, just to touch on a few things, the bill doesn't change the costs on the law. We didn't touch that. It's where it was, and I know some people consider them too much. As you've heard, they don't generally cover the cost of doing the core requests. Multiple requests in 14 days was brought up a number of times. And so what that is intended to do is we have a lot of people who will, instead of submitting one request, they break it down into 10 smaller requests and submit that, because it's a loophole for them to be able to get 10 free hours instead of 1 free hour. And, so we did make clear that it's multiple requests on essentially the same subject. So if it's a different thing, you can have multiple requests, because we did get that feedback and we wanted to make sure we took it into account. As an example, the League of Women Voters asked for something that I actually asked my stakeholders. I'm like, well, why don't we just say that for every day late you are in fulfilling a core request, that you give the requester an hour free? And what they told me on our stakeholder calls is, and I listened to them because they're the people who are on the ground doing the work and making the request, is we would rather have a breakdown of costs. So we put reasonable breakdown of costs into the bill to make sure that people could get that information. My bills are not, I really try not to micromanage what we're doing, because the needs in rural Colorado and urban Colorado and different types of governmental entities are all different. So yes, some people want us to put more specific breakdown of costs into law, where I think that we said reasonable, and that can be managed by those governmental entities to be something that's not a 50-page detailed report, but a reasonable, it's going to cost us, 40 hours of time to do this, and it's going to, retrieval time, and it's going to cost more time for our attorneys to review it, and it costs additional time for redactions. Those are the types of things that I think are reasonable to put out there. I do want to say really thank you very much to everybody who participated in this process, because whether you're against the bill, for the bill, or an amend on the bill, we had a lot of really good conversations. And I just want to reiterate that people really came to the table from both sides to try and say, well, what about this? Do you think we could do this? And they really tried to thread some needle on some complicated questions. And I think they made I think we've made some good progress here. But as people have said, they're essentially drowning in core requests. And this just provides that little bit of relief that we think, it's not solving the problem, but I think it will help. So I really hope you will consider voting for this bill today.
Thank you, Senator Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I too want to thank everyone that came and spoke today. And like Senator Sullivan said, it was a little mind-boggling on the county of Jefferson and what they experience. When I was in local government in Macy County, I thought if we got 20 a year, that was a lot. So that kind of was eye-opening. I do want to emphasize what my colleague Senator Kipp said about imposing a fee, because that's in the bill, and it's in response to a request only if the custodian has prior posted, published a written policy that specifies the applicable conditions concerning the research and retrieval of public records by the custodian, including the amount of the fee. And the fee imposed after the first hour cannot exceed $30 an hour. Most of the time, in my experience, and I know that where I live, it's different, but a lot of those can be taken care of before that first hour of time. But I believe that this is a positive bill that
edits current core requirements to more accurately reflect the needs of constituents and the abilities of custodians. And I hope that you will consider supporting this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any closing comments? Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate the stakeholding that you guys put on this, because I've heard from a lot of folks that you have done immense stakeholding, and to have Mr. Valdez come up here and say that it's the best he's ever had, which is kind of offensive a little bit, because I've stakeholdered bills with you before. No, I'm just teasing you. I do appreciate that aspect. I just cannot get past the media part of it. I appreciate you guys coming and talking to me about it, both of you, having conversations with me about it. I just have a real issue with that aspect of it. In fact, I have a bill that I'm on in the House that's going to fix that part in the Cora thing too, that Senator Ball and I just had a discussion about treating media differently than anything else. So I appreciate you guys bringing this bill. I'm going to be a no for today, and I do appreciate everything that you've done, all the hard work that you put in this bill.
Members, other closing comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion. The correct routing is to the committee of the whole. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 25007 to the Committee on the Whole with a favorable recommendation.
All right, proper motion. Mr. Syed, please call the roll.
Senators Ball,
Yes.
Pelton B,
No.
Pelton R,
Aye.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. All right, the vote is 4-1, and Senate Bill 77 will progress to the committee of the whole. Thank you, sponsors. All right, members, that's it for today. We're going to start to have some heavier committee days the next couple of weeks, but we'll see you Tuesday. Until then, State Affairs is adjourned.